This program contains scenes that have been dramatized, with special attention given to historical accuracy.
Roulette, a spin of the wheel, and it's anybody's guess where the ball will land, unless you're not guessing.
This is something that we can predict.
Even Las Vegas can evade the laws of science.
Very, very ingenious.
For two Bohemian physics students,
mano a mano against the casinos.
it's an irresistible challenge.
Wild experience.
They inspire others.
They're ready to do battle.
And court disaster.
Was going to beat these big, rich, bad guy casinos at their own game, right under their nose.
Fear, fortune, physics. An unlikely pair of gamblers risk it all on the ultimate science experiment. Albert Einstein once said, "No one can possibly win at roulette unless he steals money from the table while the dealer isn't looking."
10.
Yes!
So, if you're a young physics student in a casino with your best friend, absolute gambling rookies, how do you beat the house? You're out of your element.
12. Congratulations, sir.
I'm sorry.
Things could go wrong and get totally, dangerously out of control. (1975). The war finally comes to an end in Vietnam. The FBI captures heiress on the run, Patty Hearst, in San Francisco. And in Portland, Oregon, a daring plan is being hatched to beat the Las Vegas casinos. For the past several months, Hoermann Packard, a gifted physics student at Reed College, has become obsessed with the game of roulette. He is haunted by a single question. Could the physical properties of roulette be used to predict the outcome of any given spin?
The first order of business was just to study the roulette wheel and the ball and figure out whether or not there was enough predictability so that this project made sense.
Hoermann knows that to understand the dynamics of a specific roulette wheel, he'll first need to take a measurement of the ball's velocity as it makes its way around the rim. He heads to Las Vegas to gather his first data.
It seems all very adventurous to actually go into the casino and see if this thing is going to work.
Hoermann comes up with an ingenious way to track the ball's velocity. As the ball spins around the roulette wheel, he tracks its motion by secretly tapping on a microphone every time it passes a fixed point.
As soon as you realize that there is this layer of predictability in the dynamics of the wheel and the ball, then that opens the door to having a possibility to beat the game.
By playing back the tape and measuring the time between the clicks, he can track not only the ball's velocity, but how the velocity decreases over the course of the spin.
I was interested in the intellectual interest of conquering randomness or understanding exactly what the limits of randomness and predictability were.
Hoermann knows he has hit on something extraordinary. He also knows he has a lot of work to do before he can create a system to seriously beat the casinos. For this, he will need the help of someone with a scientific mind. Someone he can trust.
Doyne, you in there?
Norman?
Doyne Farmer is Norman's best friend from childhood.
I thought you were in Vegas. No.
And is just starting the graduate program in physics at the University of California at Santa Cruz.
I knew Hoermann from the time we were 8 or 9 years old. And even at that age, I remember Hoermann coming in with his crystal radio and showing the scout troop his crystal radio.
So what, did you miss me? Don't tell me you need money, because I'm really tight with textbooks and, everything else.
Forget about school for a second. Think about it, man. Everything we know about roulette is bound by the laws of physics.
I have to say, initially, I was pretty skeptical about the whole thing.
Yeah, but there's friction and air
You
resistance.
can figure that out.
But then he started talking to me, and the idea somehow took hold.
But what about when the ball hits those little diamonds?
That happens less than 10% of the time. I checked it out.
It's too complicated, Norman.
It's classic Newtonian physics.
When Isaac Newton first published his laws of motion in 1687, he shed revolutionary new light on how moving bodies behave. These laws should define the outcome of any game with moving parts, even roulette.
We have a ball that's rolling, we have something that's falling, we have something else that's spinning, and these are things that physics has dealt with and understood for centuries. These are the kinds of things that we can write equations for and solve the equations.
I mapped it out. Here, look. The deceleration of the ball is consistent.
The results support Norman's theory. They seem to indicate that the motion of a roulette ball
It's not random.
is a pattern just waiting to be solved.
That's right. We can predict its motion just by using physics. I mean, imagine how much money we could make. What do you say?
I say it's crazy. Let's do it.
Norman and I worked on some very wacky science projects when we were kids, but this is by far the most insane and the most brilliant.
In order to predict where the ball will land, Doyne and Norman need to calculate the timing of two events.
Where the ball will be when it leaves the outer track, and where the rotor will be, where the numbers will be at a certain moment.
Near to where the two coincide will be the winning number.
You see, when you look at roulette through the language of physics, it's the universe in miniature. A whirling, glittering mix of forces, all playing out a tiny, elegant dance. Cool.
Norman's initial research suggests that by scientifically tracking the ball, they might be able to predict where it'll land. While the prediction won't reveal an actual number, it may be accurate enough to predict the general area on the wheel that may come up. Their target is to be able to narrow their bets to a 1/8 slice of the wheel, an octant containing about 5 numbers. If they could do that, they could increase their odds by an incredible 750% and win a fortune.
The dream was that you somehow, through doing some clever scientific thing, make a lot of money and get complete independence from the system.
Their dream, to found a utopian scientific community, might just come true if they succeed in creating a physics-based system to beat roulette. The spinning wheel has changed many fortunes from the time it first took Europe by storm in 1765. 35 years later, roulette arrived in New Orleans and gained popularity among American gamblers as a game that requires little skill and immense luck.
Before the advent of card counters and in the casino business, the greatest number of books written about how to beat the games were written about roulette.
And there have been several major scams related to roulette, the best known of is called pass posting, brought to its height by Richard Marcus, who made millions by deftly switching the bet after the spin of the wheel. Virtually any system designed to win at roulette was based on cheating until Doyne and Norman come along.
So it's very exciting as a scientist to think, hey, there's something that everybody thinks is completely random, it's an unbeatable game, and yet we think we can actually predict it and make money from that.
To beat the game with a physics-based system, Doyne and Norman have their work cut out for them. First, they must select a specific wheel to analyze. Then, they must study the action of the ball on that wheel and write a set of equations predicting where it will land. And finally, find a way to make use of those equations inside an actual casino. But before they do anything, they need a professional casino-grade roulette wheel to experiment with. Doyne tracks down one of Las Vegas's leading casino suppliers, Paul's Gaming Devices.
It turns out it was actually the main manufacturer of roulette wheels in Nevada.
Paul has exactly what they need, a well-engineered B.C. Willis regulation wheel, but it costs $1,500, a fortune for 2 starving students. Norman will conduct the first tests, but he's back at school in Portland, so Doyne ships the wheel from his dorm in Santa Cruz.
We got a call back from the shipping company saying, well, we're having a problem.
Worried that their precious investment has been damaged, Doyne immediately drives to the loading dock in Oakland where the wheel is being held. What the young physicist finds is far worse than a damaged crate.
James Doyne, Farmer?
Yeah.
I'm Special Agent Massey, FBI.
Doyne faces a nightmare, busted by the FBI before even setting foot in a casino.
We have a couple of questions we'd like to ask you.
To save the roulette project from doom, he needs to think fast, or it's game over. Two physics students, Doyne Farmer and Farmer and Packard, have sunk their life savings into a roulette wheel. They are hooked on finding a way to beat the game through physics. But first, Doyne must get past the FBI, who suspect an illegal gambling scheme.
Seeing an FBI agent, it's a pretty scary thing. I mean, you know, I'd watched Dragnet as a kid. I didn't want them knocking on my door and shipping me off to federal prison.
Doyne tries to remember the salesman's pitch.
It's a collector's item. I can show you. There's 12 different types of African wood.
I tried to explain to him that this was an antique roulette wheel and it was really not going to be used for gambling.
There's ebony, teak, mahogany, there's zebra wood. You know what? Zebra wood's the coolest because the cross section gives you this brown and black striped pattern, and that gives a really nice finish, and so it's just it's really special.
I'm not used to doing things that are illegal and lying and the whole business of having to carry off a story and be consistent. It always makes me nervous.
The physics student takes his best shot at acting.
You just can't find that type of precision tooling anymore.
And the FBI buys it. They let him go. Afraid to transport the wheel again, Doyne and Norman make Santa Cruz their headquarters. Late at night, in the campus physics lab, Doyne starts defining the steps to their first goal, measuring the forces acting on a moving roulette ball.
Roulette is a physical system, and if you can measure the initial position and velocity and you know the forces acting on it, you should be able to predict what's going to happen.
As Doyne sinks more and more time into studying roulette, his schoolwork falls by the wayside. The project completely consumes him. His girlfriend, Letty Belin, does her best to be supportive.
I wasn't happy with it. I'm a realist. I could pretty much see early on this was a lot bigger than Doyne and Norman were thinking.
I ended up actually dropping out of school for a year. I had to if I was ever going to finish this thing.
Doyne derails his promising career as an astrophysicist. He also must give up his income as a teaching assistant.
There was financial pressure. I was very concerned.
As soon as Norman graduates from college in Portland, he joins Doyne in Santa Cruz.
It would be a summer project, and then it developed into this project that had a life of its own.
The first-time entrepreneurs formally incorporate. They name their company Eudaimonic Enterprises.
Eudaimonia is a state of felicity or bliss.
A classical utopian vision of creating some sort of community.
Obtained through a life lived in accordance with reason.
But to get to eudaimonia, Doyne and Norman have a long way to go. They must still quantify the movement of the ball. From the moment it leaves the croupier's hand to the moment it lands in the cup.
We spent a tremendous amount of time our first summer actually taking data.
We had this big thing we called the guillotine, which had the camera hanging over the roulette wheel.
How's that? Okay, back a little bit to the
left?
Yeah.
Okay.
They rig a microphone which triggers the camera shutter exactly when the ball falls off the outer track. With each spin, they take a picture and write down where the ball finally lands.
That allowed us to make a very accurate measurement about the distribution of where the ball was landing and really understood how the ball was bouncing.
How's that?
It's beautiful. It looks just like Vegas.
But can they now take what they know about this specific wheel and use it to predict the outcome of a spin on any roulette wheel in any casino?
One thing you have to do is figure out certain fixed properties of a given table. And it might take dozens or hundreds of spins, gradually collecting data to figure out how fast does the rotor spin down for this particular table, how fast does the ball slow down for this particular table.
They discover that after observing any wheel for about 30 minutes, they have just enough data to determine those fixed properties.
And once you know all of those things, there are only a handful of things that vary from spin to spin.
4 variables which depend solely on the dealer. How fast he spins the central rotor, when he lets it go, when he throws the ball, and how fast he throws it.
If you click when 00 passes a fixed spot in the room and passes it again, those 2 clicks give you both the position and the speed of the rotor. And if you click when the ball passes that same spot in the table and when it passes that same spot in the table again, those 2 clicks give you both the location and the speed of the ball.
From each specific targeted roulette wheel, Doyne and Hoermann must collect this key information while the wheel is in play. Once they've determined the fixed properties, they're ready for the last and most challenging step: applying the equations that will predict in which octant or eighth of the wheel the ball will land. But how can they work complex math equations in the middle of a casino?
To predict the path of the ball, we need to make hundreds of computations in a few seconds. We're going to need a computer.
Doyne and Hoermann must build their roulette predicting computer from scratch. And it must be portable and hidden from casino security.
Nobody thought about a computer back then where you basically had to sort of operate it in secret and get feedback in secret.
Though it's not illegal to use a computer device in casinos in 1975, playing with an advantage means playing with fire.
We were a lot more worried about the practical effects of dealing with the mafia and the casinos than we were worried about the legality.
Despite their fears, Doyne and Hoermann forge ahead. Doyne writing a computer program that can predict roulette, and Hoermann designing a system for inputting and exporting the data. But how can they build a computer that will go undetected in a casino?
Obviously, you can't pull out a keyboard and start typing away, so you need things that can be data entry devices, not a mouse, not a keyboard, but little tiny switches that can be hidden.
We decided to run wires down to shoes, and then in the sole of the shoes embed a little micro switch and have that micro switch actuated by big toes.
And once the clandestine computer made its calculations, how could it tell the player where to place the bet?
And we went through all kinds of ideas.
Send data to tiny speakers in their ears. Transmit radio signals to a van parked outside the casino. Or what about electric shocks?
Anything yet?
Nope.
We had got little patches from places that were doing psychology experiments and tried administering these shocks in a controlled way.
How about now?
Nada.
Say when. Ow! When?
Oddly enough, the best solution is an electromagnetic device used in everything from cars to vending machines. It's called a solenoid.
A solenoid is basically a device that when it's hooked up to a battery or a voltage, power supply, it causes some mechanical motion. You can think of an old-style doorbell. Basically, there's that big metal ringer, and then there's a little plunger that keeps striking it. You apply a little voltage to the doorbell, and this thing keeps smacking into the gong.
A metal plate mounted with solenoids would relay predictions to the player through distinct thumping patterns against their skin. Securing the vibrating solenoids in place requires creative jerry-rigging.
Better?
We're in business.
This was a shoestring operation.
They need material that's inexpensive and durable, yet sensitive enough for the player to feel the thumping motion.
We actually used latex, thin latex, the best source for which was condoms at the time.
As Doyne and Norman overcome their technological hurdles, they must also design a plan of attack.
Our thought was that we needed a second person who could be completely casual, who had no job except actually lay the bets down.
A two-person system could help avoid casino detection. But how would the two players communicate?
You need some kind of encoded radio transmission, and you can't have a large antenna.
A radio system that sends clear yet undetectable signals? Easier said than done. It was slow going, and time is passing by.
What happened? I mean, did we slip into a wormhole or something? 2 years later, and we're still futzing with this thing. Man, I'm so broke. We gotta get to Vegas.
We were having a lot of problems with the communication system.
I'm still not getting anything.
So in the end, I decided, look, screw it.
Skip the radio. We'll hardwire the computer to the solenoids, and I'll wear them both.
You're going in alone?
Just for a test run.
What am I gonna do?
Watch my back, and if a pit boss grabs me, watch out!
We'd read books like The Black Felt Jungle. Jail was not the bugaboo that was in our heads. It was having our kneecaps broken by the guys in the back room.
With their dream of a scientific utopia, riding on the success of a system for predicting roulette, Doyne and Norman are finally prepared to risk it all in Las Vegas. Two graduate students, Doyne Farmer and his friend Norman Packard, have used their knowledge of physics to invent a method of predicting the winning numbers in roulette. They formed a company, Eudaimonic Enterprises, with a goal of making enough money to create a utopian scientific community. They've spent almost 2 years and their life savings getting to this point, testing their scheme along with a hidden computer in a real Vegas casino.
The computer and the batteries typically went under the arms. And then another set of wires went down pants legs to the shoes, to the toes.
Once he's picked a table, Doyne plays low-stakes roulette. But what he's really doing is using the toe switches hidden in his shoe.
There you go.
Entering preliminary data about the wheel into the computer he's wearing around his chest.
They had a roulette wheel that nice tilt, and they were spinning the center wheel nice and slowly.
Now that he's entered enough data, Doyne is ready for the real play. As the croupier spins the ball, Doyne has about 15 seconds to make it all happen. Take the final measurements, 2 clicks for the wheel, 2 clicks for the ball. Wait for the computer to tap back its instruction. And then finally, place his bets.
You could just feel it, just thumping against your skin.
Yes!
times the system encounters statistical fluctuations.
You can predict a certain octant and place your bet on a number in that octant and have it land right next to the number that you're betting on.
But over time, it gives Doyne an enormous advantage. 44% to be exact. For every dollar he bets, he wins $1.44.
It was a tremendous rush of excitement to feel the chips piling up and really feel everything working.
Yes!
Nice one.
12. Gentleman wins again.
I was winning. I mean, I was doing fantastically well.
Congratulations, sir.
But before long, casino security is onto Doyne's repeated wins. And just as the heat turns up, another problem kicks in.
I was periodically getting shocks from the system. I was sweating a lot, and that's one of the reasons I was getting the shocks.
Are you okay?
Sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, sir. Good night.
These shocks were just driving me crazy. I knew that I was in trouble here when the pit boss came in. I had to sit there, of course, making sure I wasn't fiddling with the connectors coming out of my socks, where he could see me under the stall.
Doyne and the pit boss begin a waiting game. Until...
Pit 6, you there?
Pit 6, copy.
Can you check out a possible counter on BJ 12?
I'm on my way.
A narrow escape, but for Doyne and Norman, it's a tremendous victory. The winnings may be unimpressive, but the actual value is incalculable. Proof that their system works.
We thought we were going to make millions.
And if the technology were really deployed with multiple teams in multiple locations, then even more.
Now, they are ready to enlist fellow renegade scientists in a life-changing venture.
It seemed to just attract people. Altogether, there were about 30 people involved in the project.
There are 2 players on each team. The data taker and the bettor.
The first recruits are the brightest stars on campus, including a classical pianist turned physics student named Ingrid Hoermann.
Doyne was the salesman. He's so enthusiastic. He gives you this weird self-confidence and sense of adventure when you're around him.
The whole time he or she is there, they're collecting data on this wheel. The rate of the ball's speed and deceleration, and the rotor's relative speed. Now, once the processor has received enough data to work with from this wheel, it can start to make accurate predictions. That's when the data taker calls in the bettor.
So the computer can predict exactly which pocket the ball is going to land in?
No. That's why we'll be betting on octants. You see, the computer has shown us the best results at predicting which eighths of the wheel or the octant the ball lands in. Now, each octant has 4 to 5 numbers, and we'll probably be betting on all 5 numbers.
But won't that give us away?
Not at all. Observe. If the computer gives us this octant, the numbers will be 4, 16, 33, 21, and 6. But if you look at it on the betting layout...
It looks completely random.
Cool. How much to play?
In eudaimonic enterprises, you give what you can. Time, money, or expertise. And you get a share of the profit.
What kind of profits do you think?
Well, we start small, build a bankroll, and then we expand.
We could make millions.
And what if we get caught?
This system is perfectly legal. There's nothing against it on the books.
I mean, you couldn't have found a more ignorant bunch of people about casinos. None of us were casino people.
Yeah, but I like my kneecaps.
Listen, you guys, computers like these, casinos don't even know they exist.
Welcome to the ultimate physics experiment.
Their goal is to strike Las Vegas over summer vacation.
I got one copper.
But first, they've got to build more computers and train.
My whole foot keeps moving.
Just your toe, just your toe.
It's got to be instinctive. The fantasy was to live sort of undercover.
And I'll go here, 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 and then here. Like playing Rachmaninoff. Yeah, but this is harder.
I don't know what that means.
All this in between cramming for exams.
The way this roulette project has brought people together, that's the power of science. Not to destroy, to create, to invent, to unite. Together, I truly believe we can accomplish anything.
When finals are over, it's time for the Hoermanns to hit Las Vegas.
It was totally outside our society's normal system, and it was going to beat these big, rich, bad guy casinos at their own game right under their nose.
The battle is on. Rookie gamblers with a brilliant scheme versus brutal casino security, ready to break anyone with an edge. (1978). Doyne, Farmer, and Packard, gifted physics students, have discovered a way to predict the outcome of roulette with physics. And they've trained fellow students to help them cash in on their system. Now it's time for them to launch their attack.
Sin City, the neon beast. Terrifying and yet beautiful. And now it's time to bring it down.
As we were getting out of the car to go into the casinos, there's always a bit of an adrenaline rush because you're actually going into the battlefield, as it were.
You'd all spread out, okay, you take this block and that block, and I'll do the Harrah's and the Silver Nugget.
The war against roulette begins quietly. No one suspects these students of having a secret advantage.
Nobody was wearing body computers back then.
Certainly, sir. Best of luck.
It took quite a lot of attention to operate the computer and make the predictions. You had to be clicking when the rotor is passing a reference point, clicking when the ball is passing a reference point.
Doyne and Norman assume the role of data taker. As soon as they've gathered enough information for the computer to start making predictions, the team play begins. Ingrid and the others are bettors.
If the data taker bet on even, you were supposed to join the game. Is it better?
Hi.
Hello there. Lovely lady, pretty in pink. Best of luck, ma'am.
All right, make me rich.
They could make chit-chat with a croupier, appear not to be paying any attention to what was going on with a wheel.
Come on, Mama.
The bettor's objective is to receive the predictions, lay down the big bets,
Oh, so close.
and keep cool.
The number is 35, black and odd.
I had a good feeling about you.
Congratulations, Miss.
It's like playing music.
Black and odd.
You could feel things sort of click into place, and I won about $600 in an hour and a half or 2 hours with $1 or $2 bets, and it was such a good feeling.
Congratulations, Miss.
Oh my God, my toes
Oh my God, how'd you keep a straight face?
Oh, you just run out of juice.
Yeah, those computers are powerful.
To Sir Isaac Newton.
Eudaimonia is a state of bliss. Tonight we know. We did it. Physics beat roulette. We beat roulette.
Doyne and Norman's teams begin using their system in casinos across Las Vegas.
You can't beat being in a casino with tons of equipment all over you.
It was pretty hard to keep it together, not break out in a grin when I would see her win a lot of money.
My fantasy was to be like a Marlene Dietrich who was gambling.
But because they are only betting a few dollars at a time, the winnings never go beyond hundreds of dollars in any given session.
Certainly really exciting moments. If we'd only been playing at, say, $50 stakes, that would have been $250,000.
We were rationalizing to ourselves that it was ethical and moral to go mano a mano against the casinos.
That is, if the casinos don't catch on to them first.
There's an absolute need to know who the threats are, who's the bad guys, because they become a threat to your business.
There's a Robin Hood element to it.
We realized at the time that the casinos probably wouldn't take the same attitude and wouldn't want us to be using these kind of techniques.
Sure enough, casino security begins to notice their uncanny lucky streaks.
Money brings heat.
We were actually quite paranoid about being discovered.
Money brings attention. There's a lot of holes in the desert that nobody wants to talk about.
With the pressure to play long sleepless nights at one roulette table after another, and the constant fear of being discovered, these young students find the project going from glamorous to grueling. And with summer break coming to an end, Norman and Doyne must hold the team together or risk losing years of work and their real goal, creating a Shangri-La of science. It's been 3 years since childhood friends Doyne Farmer and Farmer and Packard set their sights on beating roulette with physics. They've tackled tremendous challenges. They've eluded many close calls. Now, they face the greatest obstacle yet, a massive team meltdown.
When you're dealing with, in an era before PDAs, it's very tough to do wiring. You can imagine that those wires are going to flex, they're going to break off.
Just was an endless stream of technical problems.
Physically, you're getting poked in the side under your arm with a cold piece of metal, and you're hoping against hope that you won't get shocked. The equipment was constantly breaking down.
The project turned into such an intense thing that at times it became quite difficult to keep the tension under control.
I was frustrated with Doyne at that point because he was bombing ahead, and I was constantly feeling like we were right on the edge, and Doyne was pushing too fast.
Momentum is everything. To reach eudaimonia, we have to keep going. We have to make it work, no matter what.
One big night puts Doyne's determination to the test.
We were at the Lady Luck.
22, black and even.
Everything was clicking right along.
You got 35 to 1.
Keep them coming, handsome.
Oh, you bet.
We made $500 or $600 in the course of 20 or 30 minutes.
Doyne's computer is hammering out predictions like crazy, and they're spot on.
who were doing really well.
And at one point, I just started to feel a little bit of a tingle.
I noticed her behaving oddly and was worried she was in some kind of distress.
And then it got to be stronger tingle, and it would make me sweat more.
Concerned about Ingrid, Doyne signals her to stop betting.
She just wouldn't quit.
No more bets. $26, black and even.
Sensing disaster, Doyne cashes out and leaves the table.
That's it for me.
All right, thank you, sir.
With no data taker to feed her the predictions, Ingrid reluctantly ends the game as well.
When Doyne and I went out into the street, and I looked, I had this huge, it was a, quarter-sized burn in my skin. The skin was gone.
Now the malfunctioning equipment has seriously burned someone.
Sacrificial flesh. If that's the price of freedom, we can't afford it anymore.
The personal and monetary costs of trying to beat the wheel keep rising.
The expenditures mounted up to tens of thousands of dollars.
The winnings go straight into food, rent, and trying to fix all the equipment problems.
In the end, we didn't really make all that much money. I think we probably grossed about $10,000 in the casino.
The summer comes to a close, and team members must return to class.
The dichotomy between school on one side and working on the project on the other side was quite difficult, actually, at times, to make the two things meet.
For many, it's simply impossible, and they leave the team. Doyne and Norman must make the same choice. Either abandon the dream or their academic careers.
Everything I know is in this. Every physics formula, every law of nature, every logic trick.
Doesn't keep the wires from breaking.
Or the radio from failing.
Or people from getting shocked.
Getting burned.
We beat it, you know that? The random forces of the universe.
Yeah, so where's our fame and fortune?
You can't predict everything.
After 3 years devoted to beating roulette, Doyne and Norman agree to do the unthinkable, to disband the team, to let the project go. Although they must give up their dream of creating a retreat for the pursuit of pure science, they proved without a doubt that physics can beat roulette.
It did occur to me to do roulette as my dissertation, but it wasn't quite clear where that would lead in terms of a career track.
If I knew the equipment was working, I would love to do it again. If I knew I could see all those people again, I'd be there in an instant.
I think about the project every day of my life, practically. I mean, it was a totally formative experience.
Part of the adventure was creating an adventure that was larger than any single individual activity.
The idea of eudaimonia is that it's a proper goal of being able to look back at your life and think about your life as something where you did the best you could.
Exploring life, challenging the mind, beating the system. For visionary scientists like Doyne, Farmer, and Norman Packard, the quest for adventure is never over.